So for step 3, we are going to start adding some color to our frame here. But first you need to take a look at it and kind of start deciding where you might want some of your blocks of color to be. Think about, do you want it to be full of color? Do you want it to be just a few blocks of color and a whole lot of white? What colors do you want to have next to each other? To help you decide, you might take a square of tissue paper and lay it in the space to see if you like where that goes. So maybe I'll do, maybe this one here will be red. I like doing this before I get started with my glue because then it helps me kind of visualize what my project will look like. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to, but it's just an idea. If you have some little spaces in here, those are going to look really cool with different colors in them. I think I want to do that one blue and this one yellow. Okay, so you can kind of lay out some squares, help you decide if you want. If not, you can just go. I've done this project before and I had a really complicated design, and so I laid out all my squares, and then before I started gluing I wanted to take them all off so it wouldn't get too messy. But before I did that I took a picture of it so I could remember where all my colors went. If you have a camera, if you have a phone, you could do that before you start taking your squares off. Once you have a plan, you can remove your squares. I'm going to leave the blue ones because that's the color I'm going to start with. And I will show you how to do this glue step. So, what you need to do here, you're going to take your bowl and you have this nice spongy brush. If you pick that up, you can probably feel that it's kind of heavy. It has quite a bit of water and glue in it. So what you need to do before you apply glue to your project is give that thing a nice squish against the side of your bowl. Okay, you can see the glue squishing out of there. Okay. The glue mixture that we made is really runny, so this brush really soaks it up. And because our tissue paper is so thin, you don't need a whole lot of glue for this. Okay, so once your brush is squished out pretty good, you're going to take it and whatever space you want to start with, I think I'm going to go here, you're just going to brush that glue onto the black frame all around the space. Okay, all around the perimeter of that space. You can see that there. And then also on the plastic in that space. Okay, you can brush, you can kind of dab, because this is a sponge brush, you can kind of dab it on there as well. Okay, you can set your brush aside. I like putting it on the top like that so it doesn't get down in my glue and get soaked up again. And then once you have glue on there, you are ready to lay on a square. Now, when you lay these squares on, you need to make sure that at least part of it is touching some of your black frame. And you might also run into, like this one here, it's a little bit wide for that space, so I'm going to just give it a little trim here so that it doesn't overlap into this next space, because this space I think I'm going to do a different color. Okay, so sometimes for your smaller spaces, this one's really skinny, you might need to trim down some of your squares so that they fit better. So you can see there, my square of blue tissue paper is overlapping on the black, and some of it is just on top of the plastic. Now, once you get it laid down, you're going to go back with your brush. I didn't get any more glue. Remember, it was just sitting on top, but there's still plenty in that brush, in that sponge. So you're going to take that sponge and just kind of squish on top of your square. Okay, that's going to make sure that all the edges are sealed down, and give it some glue on top for your next square to attach to. I'm going to be smart here and give this one a trim before I lay it down. How about that? Okay, when you lay your next one, make sure that it overlaps with the one before it. So you can see it went on top of the last blue square, and it's also on top of some of my frame. Now, Still haven't re-dipped in the glue. I've got plenty in there. Go on and squish on top. Okay. I'm going to do that one more time and fill up. Ooh, fell in. See that? My brush fell into my bowl, so it got a whole bunch more glue in it. Now I'm going to squish it back out, okay? Remember to squish on the side of the bowl really often, okay? Because if you just dip and go straight on here, you're going to have way too much glue, and it's going to get really runny, and the tissue paper will rip and get really messy. Okay, so make sure you're squishing on the side of the bowl a lot. Okay, there might be times when I see how I already put glue around the frame, but it's starting to get a little dry, so I'm just going to put a little bit more on there before I lay my square down. And lay it on so it overlaps and squish on top. Okay, you are going to repeat this process for any of the spaces that you want to be. So I'm going to fill up that space with blue. Whoops, fell in there. Gotta squish. Okay, it happens to the best of us. No worries, just make sure you squish it. And I've got plenty of glue on there. Let me lay this one so that it overlaps. Oh my goodness. This sponge really wants to be in that glue. Gotta squish. And smush on top. I'm not smushing very hard because if I did, it would squeeze out a whole lot of glue. Okay, so you just barely have to tap on top. Remember, this tissue paper is really thin, so it doesn't need very much glue. Our glue's nice and watery, and it doesn't take a whole lot. Okay, so go ahead and get going on some colors here. I recommend doing one color at a time. So, for instance, I'm going to do all the spaces that I want blue. I'm going to do those all first. Sometimes, especially with this red tissue paper, sometimes the color in the tissue paper will kind of leak out and it'll get into your brush and into your glue. So that's why I recommend doing one color at a time. If you want to rinse out your brush in between colors, that might be a good idea. If you do that, just make sure you really squish out all the water before you go back in, okay? The most important part of this project today is lots and lots of squishing of this sponge brush. Okay, so enjoy, get you some color on there, and once your first color is done, you'll be ready to scroll down for the next step.